The country is crying out for change. The path to a Labour government runs through Watford. Come and help us make a difference. There is never a better time than now to secure the future of our country.
Hello and welcome to the We Are Labour podcast. I am Dan Greef, your host, and this is the show that highlights our amazing Labour candidates and the constituencies we need to win to form the next Labour government. As you hear the stories and experiences from our candidates, I want you to think, how can you help? What can you do to make the difference? Can you go and leaflet, knock on doors, donate money, or phone canvass voters? By giving a little of your time and or money, it will make a massive difference. This election will be won by Labour members doing our bit to help get the Labour message of hope out to our communities. Let's crack on with the show. Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of We Are Labour, the podcast where I talk to the candidates who are standing in the constituencies we have to win to be able to form the next Labour government. And today is the turn of Matt Turmaine. What a lovely man he is. Introduced to me by my wife, who used to know him in Hammersmith Labour. And he's now standing in Watford. Now, what was really interesting about this conversation was that Watford is a bellwether seat. So it generally tells us, and I didn't know this until he told me this, but it generally tells us which way the election is going to go. So I think you'll find that really interesting. Now, if you are in the London area, or if you're in the kind of the northwest of London area in the countryside there, and you want to go and help one of our seats, I really recommend going to Watford. There are lots of campaign days happening there. There are lots of events. So listen to the podcast, but in the show notes, I've actually left for you the website and the email address if you want to get in touch with the team there and do your bit. So, anyway, good luck with canvassing in Watford whenever you're going. And if you're on the train there now and you're listening to this, then you can get some information from Matt himself about his wonderful constituency. I hope you enjoy the show. Well, I'm joined by Matt Turmaine now. He's our candidate in Watford. Thank you so much for coming onto the show, Matt. It's great to meet you again.
Absolute pleasure, Dan. Glad to be here.
Good to see you. I saw you at conference briefly. You've got one of the funniest agents I think I ever met. He's a real laugh. What's his name again?
Steve Cox. Steve Cox. He is actually the leader of the Labour group on Three Rivers District Council. But yeah, he has a fantastic agent because, he's a fantastic agent because he knows his stuff. He knows what he's doing and what the job requires. But he is, he's a unique personality as well. So, once met, never forgotten.
He certainly is. Great guys. Thank you, Steve. We had a great time at conference. A lot of it is because of you. So thank you for that. So in that case then, Watford, you're from that area, neck of the woods originally, right?
Yeah, very nearby. So born in Amersham, so, just up the road from Watford. But yeah, I've known Watford for a very long time. So when I was a kid, this is the town that we used to come to, to do the sort of town shopping, nearby town shopping to where you live. I went to school not too far from here in a place called Chorley Wood, which is quite close by. And as a teenager, I came and did my going out to town years in Watford, which was, a lot of fun.
Great. So those stories will remain secret, I'm sure. So, okay, what's the situation in Watford with politics right now? I've been there a few times. I don't know the area that well. So what's the political scene in Watford?
Yeah, it's a really interesting town in terms of its sort of political makeup, really. So, one of the things about Watford residents is that they really differentiate who they vote for depending on what the elections are. And so it's quite a confusing one to get your head around. I mean, if you walk around Watford, you probably think, oh, yeah, this is this kind of town or that kind of town, depending on whereabouts you are. But, we have a two-tier local government structure. So obviously, Hertfordshire is the county council that Watford sits within. Watford is a borough council of its own right, which is controlled by the Liberal Democrats at the moment with a elected mayor. It sits within the M25, so it's got a sort of proximity to London, but is still part of the shires in that regard. And most interestingly, it is a bellwether seat when it comes to general elections. But it does break down in quite interesting ways. I mean, I think in 2014, I think it was, we had a lot of elections up. So we had local elections, we had a mayoral election. There were European elections taking place that year as well to the European Parliament when we were still a part of that. And, you would frequently meet people who would say, well, I'm voting this way in the European elections, that way in the local elections. And then, the following year in the general in 2015, they would vote a different way as well, which was quite strange. So, we won the European elections. Labour won the European elections in 2014 with UKIP second. I think the Lib Dems came third and the Tories fourth. And yet the following year, the Tories won the general election seat that was taking place. So, it is a real mix. But yes.
So they're very discerning voters, I guess. They are, informed. They know what they think about different issues. That's really interesting. I like that because, you kind of feel like you've got a chance to make an argument there and really make inroads. Whereas I guess some places you might feel like, for instance, I stood in South Cambridgeshire before, and Heidi Allen, who was the MP there, these are her words. She said, "You put a blue rose out on a brick, and it gets voted in round here because they just vote Tory." So I guess it's that interesting dynamic where you can actually make arguments and really kind of work the doorsteps and listen to what people are saying because they take an interest in politics. I think that's fantastic. Really interesting.
That's right. I mean, it's if you're very lucky if you live in Watford because you've got all political parties fighting over your vote pretty much every year. I mean, we have third up elections for the council each year. The fourth year, you've got a county council election. Then, of course, there are the parliamentary elections that take place and the various other ones that are taking place as well. So, so there's always something going on. If you don't like politics, it's probably not the place to be.
Yeah, May's not a great month for you in that case, I guess. So I was going to go to this question then because it made me think. So I live just outside Cambridge, and of course the Liberal Democrats are a big presence in the Cambridgeshire area, especially around the city itself. This is an interesting debate, right? So you're talking about local versus national politics, and the Lib Dems, you said, control the council. So nationally, that's not going to be the case, we believe, right? Because that is a separate thing. And Watford people are very discerning. I mean, somebody said to me once locally, I trust the Lib Dems to deal with my bins. I just don't trust them to deal with the country. I don't know what you think about that, but is that kind of the situation there?
I think, I mean, it's. I'm not sure that's necessarily the way I would describe it, but the sentiment is comparable without a shadow of a doubt. I mean, Watford is a bellwether seat at a parliamentary level. It just is. It's one of those places that are really representative of the country, and it does that each time. I mean, so we have a Conservative MP at the moment who was elected in 2019. It's been Tory since 2010 when Labour was ejected from government under Gordon Brown. And Labour lost the parliamentary seat here in Watford at that time. And it always goes the way of the national swing. So it is curious in that regard. As far as the Liberal Democrats are concerned, I mean, they are strong locally here, in terms of the council, without a shadow of a doubt. And, we're all familiar with the Lib Dem bar chart, as I'm sure you are coming from Cambridge. But I mean, realistically, they have no chance here. I mean, you can go and look at the results on Wikipedia, as I'm sure you have done, to see how that's played out through history. I mean, it's there have been Liberal MPs here, but the last time was in 1906, so more than 100 years ago.
A while ago.
A while ago. It's going to be Labour or Tory walking into Downing Street. It's going to be a Labour MP or a Tory MP here in Watford, and that isn't going to change. Whenever the general election comes this year, I think it's in terms of a way to distill it. The path to a Labour government goes through Watford, if I can paraphrase a quote, and that is absolutely true. If we don't win in Watford, very unlikely that you've got a Labour government. But if we do, it probably shows that we will.
So you heard it here first, guys. On election night, you need to be looking out for this seat. You need to be looking for Watford, and that's going to be one of the best indicators for how the evening is going. So what brings you into politics?
If I may add something.
Sorry, go on.
Sorry, I was just going to add briefly to that. So one of the things related to this is, of course, the boundary review. So Watford was, prior to the boundary review taking effect, Watford was about 41 on the target list of seats for Labour. After that boundary review, so we've lost part of the constituency and gained a part of a different constituency. We're now, according to some research that's been done, number 9 on the target list. So, it is definitely, amongst seats, it is definitely one of the ones that you should be watching out for on election night, certainly.
Wow, fantastic. Okay, so in that case, just going to ask then, what brings you into politics? What's your kind of background and why are you standing?
Yeah, well, crikey, that's the age-old good question, really, isn't it? So, I mean, from a political perspective, I mean, I became interested in politics when I was much younger, and joined the Labour Party, but did absolutely nothing. I was one of those sleeping members that, we as activists now, we're all trying to permanently motivate to come out and help us deliver leaflets and stuff.
At least we can
and
empathise.
I was, oh, I can certainly, I've got the empathy there without a shadow of a doubt. But it's, yeah. So at the time, I think it was in 2003, and I was living in London, in North London at the time, and we lost the seats to the Liberal Democrats, funnily enough, in a by-election in the wake of Iraq. And it was at that time I thought, right, okay, I'm not just going to sit here and pay my subs. I'm going to get off my backside and do something about it. And I moved, within some months of that, or for the following year, to Hammersmith in West London, and I became very active in the Andy Slaughter's seat. Yep. Andy Slaughter's the MP, Steve Cowan running a great council there as well. And so, yes, I went there, got very active, and started to be persuaded to stand for council and things like that. And so that's where the journey took me. I mean, from a personal perspective, I suppose I'm a big fan of the public sector and public services. So I worked at the BBC for many, many years. My recent career has been in health and social care. So, I understand, that kind of motivation, and I'm very passionate about it. Certainly from a media perspective, that, public service broadcasting is absolutely a fundamental culture, especially today with the speech that Kira's given, a culturally relevant part of our national fabric. And, working in health and social care, I see very regularly exactly what is going on in terms of the NHS and in terms of care provision in our country. And so, it's something that helps motivate and drive me forward, certainly.
Fantastic. Now, is this the sort of issues that are coming up on the doorstep as well? Are you hearing this from constituents who are affected by the health and social care at the moment, and also the NHS and the cuts that we've had for the last 14 years?
Yes, it does come up. I mean, because Watford's got a hospital, a big A&E hospital, and so, a large part of the local economy is related to the hospital and to the care sector. And so, there are a lot of people that you talk to who are either using the hospital, have visited the hospital, were born at the hospital, or are working there now. And so it definitely does come up. And obviously, social care very closely aligned with that as well. I mean, other issues that are coming up with a high degree of frequency are cost of living crisis. I mean, absolutely, people have been hit. Watford is a commuter town. It's an interesting one in that regard as well, in that people commute into Watford to go to work and commute out of Watford to go to the surrounding area or into London, right. And that kind of thing. So a lot of people have been hit badly by the cost of living crisis. Housing has gone up. I mean, we've all seen the craziness of food price inflation and energy bills and whatever. So all those issues are coming up quite frequently. But there is another one as well that comes up quite a lot, and that is trust in politicians. I mean, people, it's a bit of an overused example now, but that image of the Queen sitting in Westminster Abbey, at the funeral of Prince Philip, when, in Downing Street, they were all partying hard and getting drunk and all the rest of it. That still really resonates with people. And, and of course, what Liz Truss and Kwasi Kwarteng did to the economy as well.
Yeah. You know what? I totally agree. And the thing that frustrates me is that people don't necessarily follow the Conservative and Labour and Lib Dems and SNP or whatever. They just see MPs partying and they assume that all MPs are as bad as each other. Equally, we've just gone before that through the whole Brexit debate where, you had kind of like people saying about MPs are stopping Brexit and MPs are doing this, that and the other. It's been quite a confrontational decade or so, hasn't it? Where there seems to be this real opposition to the whole class of MPs, like they're one body. And it frustrates me because it's like, no, that's a Conservative Prime Minister. These are Conservative policies. This is a Conservative party, small p that is, who, and it's like, we have to have that message of hope and not just attack them, but have a message of hope in a climate which is very sceptical right now.
Yes, I think that's absolutely true. I mean, there is definitely a demographic out there which is a plague on all your houses. And, one of the biggest challenges we have is to persuade people that we are not all the same and that we are, in fact, a very different offering to them for potential government for the next 5 years than they are likely to get under the Conservatives. And, you can get through, but it takes conversation, it takes dialogue with people, and sometimes it takes a lot of persuasion. But it is frustrating, and you can understand some of that motivation. I mean, we are rare beasts being interested in politics and obsessing about it and active amongst it. The majority of the population are not, as you suggested from your previous comment. They experience life through the experience that they have. And their engagement with politics and politicians might not be a good one on that basis. And you touched on the issue of Brexit. I mean, interestingly, again, Watford was an absolute bellwether there, and it was really divided just along the lines of the way that vote took place. But but there was a huge engagement in that referendum in terms of people going to vote. And if you don't normally engage with politics and you do find it all a bit of a turn off, and that was the last time that you were persuaded to be politically engaged, and you went and voted and you got the result that you wanted, well, you've not seen the dividends of that being delivered to you, have you? And so, what lesson do you learn from that? Political engagement, why should I bother? And it's a hard job for politicians in the kind of climate where you've got Partygate and economic chaos and a cost of living crisis to persuade people that politicians can in fact be the answer to their problems, not just a further complication to it.
Yeah, wow, very eloquently put. I think that sums up exactly what my Celtic thoughts are trying to splutter out. But that's spot on. I totally agree with you on that. And so, are there any particular issues in Watford that are? I mean, I guess the national picture, of course, will affect all constituencies fairly evenly. You'd hope, not particularly worse than any parts. But is there any particular issues that are affecting Watford in this election, or at the moment, which is kind of stirring up that kind of activism or response in Watford?
Yes, I mean, I do think the state of the public services is a big thing. I mean, whether it's, schools, road infrastructure, access to GPs and all the rest of it. And, I mentioned briefly the hospital earlier on. I mean, Watford Hospital. So there's a bit of background to this. Watford Hospital, some of those buildings date back to the Victorian era. It is really, really in need of modernisation. The trust that runs it has got a great plan to modernise it. When Labour was last in power, it got to the point where the plans were there to be, for a rebuild to the hospital and for it to go ahead. And then we lost the election in 2010. Those plans were scrapped by the Conservative Liberal Democrat coalition. And nothing happened until relatively recently, when it became one of those 40 new hospitals that were promised by Boris Johnson. Although, I invite you and anyone to come to the site and try and find the first brick that has not yet been laid. So, the reality is, who knows? But it's a big issue in terms of what people's local concerns are, certainly, in addition to those other national issues that are affecting everybody.
Yeah, for sure. So in that case, then, if Labour gets into government and our mission-led government becomes a reality, how would that make a difference to Watford?
Well, I mean, the missions are a fantastic set of proposals on which to hang the idea of a government that is really going to deliver, in my opinion. I mean, one of them is get the NHS back on its feet. I mean, it really is necessary. The experience that lots of people are having in engaging with the NHS at whatever level, whether it be GP, dentists, hospital appointments, etc., is not a good one. Waiting lists are at record levels, as I'm sure we all know. There is that great graphic that I'm sure you've seen. I mean, the fact is that waiting lists go up under the Tories, and it's down to a Labour government to bring them back down again. And I think there are a number of representations of that. One is I think when Labour came into power in 97, 18 months was the average wait time for an elective operation. And it was 18 weeks by the time we left. Satisfaction levels were at their highest that they've ever been in the NHS. And you've had 14 years of austerity and Conservative government that has completely destroyed that. And, people's experience is not great and it's not satisfactory. And, it will be down to Labour to be able to fix that. In fact, I mean, to get local on it for a minute, there was a sinkhole outside Watford Hospital relatively recently in the road. And that is, very symptomatic of what I think has happened to those public services and what that means for a lot of people in their engagement with it. I mean, the other missions, are fantastic. We've got a whole brilliant set of, Great British Energy, switching it on, making sure that bills are more affordable, that, we can do something that's a long-term sustainable solution to energy prices with, relative energy independence and sustainable power generation, which will also, of course, help meet our environmental targets. But, it's a really serious ambition to say, okay, we're going to change our economy to be one that's based on a sustainable foundation. And that, there are benefits to that clearly in terms of people having jobs, good quality, high paid jobs. But, there is a commitment there to the environment and to delivering on our responsibility as a country by greening the economy and making our energy more sustainable too. There are, great proposals in getting Britain building again in terms of not just housing. I mean, Labour's obviously committed to 1.5 million new houses if we get in, but the economy more generally, there are a great set of proposals in that New Deal for working people, which has promised to be enacted within 100 days of getting into power. What that's going to do to help, offer security and lack of fear. The precariousness of work at the moment is a real problem for a lot of people.
Definitely.
And we're gonna do stuff to fix that. And then, you come on, crime is of course another mission, and making sure that we deal with that. Not just the cuts to the police services, which everyone will be familiar with, but the sort of insidious not bothering to report low-level crime anymore because they know that nothing happens about it. And obviously, there are better people qualified than I to talk about violence against women and girls, but the absolutely disgraceful rates of prosecution for rape and the general pervasive culture of that being acceptable is something that's going to be addressed and addressed really well. So take back our streets is of course the mission that relates to that, which is really good. And then you'll have heard today a lot about the creative arts in the statement that's been made, and seen the fantastic work that Bridget Phillips and her team have been doing about breaking down the barriers to opportunity and giving people, the chance to be able to make the most of their life. I mean, we were talking about this recently the other day in my little campaign team here. And, when we were kids, it was perfectly reasonable to expect to go to a local school, get a good education, go on to do an apprenticeship or college or university and get a good job. It wasn't a daydream to imagine owning your own house, Yes, and these things are not necessarily the case for people now. There are schools that can't afford paper and pencils for their pupils. I mean, it's ridiculous. So the mission's really relevant to Watford. I think it's going to be, it will be transformative if we get in, and that's going to benefit everybody.
Fantastic. Well, in that case, then I want to go to some more light-hearted questions, which I'm asking to everyone, and I want you to imagine. Yeah, okay, Jess sort of told me off when asked to this because she said, well, I would be a constituency MP at first to make sure that I really understood my constituents. And I was like, okay. So imagine that a few years down the line, if you are elected as an MP and Prime Minister Starmer asked you to serve in his cabinet, which department would you like to be a minister in that department, and why?
Okay. It's a very good question, and I would caveat it, reflecting what Jess has said, by saying much the same, that being a constituency MP is absolutely. I mean, that's why I'm doing it. It's to make a difference in my community here. Yes. But in the context of you saying light-hearted questions, then were I to be asked that, I mean, I think I've had conversations with people about how governments in other countries work, and I do think it's important to have some degree of experience in what it is that you're doing. So from a personal perspective, I guess, I worked, as I said, at the BBC for a long time. So, culture, media and sport would be appealing. I work in health and social care and have done for the last 10 years. So, working in Wes's department also, I guess, would be great. But yeah, that's probably my answer to that one.
I love that. You know what? There's such integrity in saying that you want to work in a department you have experience in to make a difference. I sometimes have felt in the last 13, 14 years, they've not cared. It's like, you're the Home Secretary today and you're the Foreign Secretary. Oh, it's changing. You're now the Home Secretary. And, it's been incredible turbulence. And I imagine that the civil service, they just need to have that stability, don't they? Where they have somebody in post for enough time, hopefully with some experience, like you say, to actually affect change. It's like, what's the point in government if you don't have that? And that's kind of it's been quite a pantomime sort of cabinet and government for the last 14 years. I think we need a bit of that. So all power.
I mean,
to
it's been It's been an absolute farce. I mean, you look at the number of home secretaries there have been, and so many of those ministerial roles. I mean, they just, the average length of time that they're in them. There is no way that you can affect positive change by having such a job for such a short period of time. Now, I don't in any way want to be disrespectful. I'm sure that, there are many people who have got brilliant skills and the ability to go in and take control of a department. That is their skill set. And so, I'm not saying that they have to be experienced in that sector from the rest of their career, but I think it's not a bad starting point, is it? And I think that is a very important consideration. I mean, I don't know. When I think back about the jobs that I've done, although I haven't worked in that many organisations, I have done different jobs within some of them, and realistically, it takes you at least 6 months to even understand what the job is that you're supposed to be doing when you go into a new organisation.
And even just the systems and the processes and even where the dining room is and the toilets. I mean, it just takes time to know stuff, doesn't it? It does. Before you get to be good at it. Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
And it takes that knowledge to be able to understand, and communicate with those people who do know better than you. And of course, I recognise roles in government, you're not there on the basis of that's just your experience. But yeah, I mean, you need some level of, continuity of care, they call it in health. And that is really beneficial to be able to, reap decent, proper decisions being made, decent legislation being passed to ensure that things are heading in the right direction, because we've seen the result of not doing that, haven't we? Which is the chaos completely. We're all living amongst now.
Yeah. So in that case, then I want you to imagine that you do eventually, you're in the cabinet and you get well known. The BBC calls you one day and they say, "Hello, this is Desert Island Discs. We'd love you to come on the show. You've got to choose the music that you want to take with you." And bear in mind, Matt, I'm going to judge this music choice. So in the future, I might be bringing this back up or even serenading you with it. Who knows? What's the one song that you would take with you and why? And by the way, if you go for very sentimental reasons why you like this song, I guess I can't really take the mick out of you. So just bear that in mind.
Don't worry. You haven't got that assurance coming up. So, that Desert Island Disc question. Yeah, I mean, crikey. So, politics is such a big part of my life at the moment that I'm gonna go bold, and I'm gonna say either Mother by Idols or Dirty Rat by Orbital would definitely be the song that would be relevant for me at the moment. Neither one of which is, I'm not a massive punk fan, but that particular band and that particular song, very very pertinent at the moment. And similarly, Dirty Rat by Orbital, that's perhaps more my thing, but that's good. So feel free to bring them up later, and they would be a fantastic soundtrack to wave goodbye to a Conservative government.
Oh, there we go. So hopefully we'll be hearing that in May or November. I mean, by the way, when do you think the election's going to be? I mean, any clues? What's your hunch?
Well, no more clues than anybody else, I suppose. I mean, I can see pathways to May. I can see pathways to the autumn. And unfortunately, I can see pathways to January 2025 as well. I mean, there's only one person who really knows what's going on. I think what can I add to this conversation that everybody else doesn't know already? I mean, I did hear a podcast in which Danny Finkelstein, who of course is a conservative, senior figure and thinker.
How to Win Elections.
That's right. Yeah. That podcast, and he was saying that, if he had any influence over them at all, he would say, do it in May, and do it in May because of damage limitation, reasons of integrity, all the stuff that is coming over the horizon, like, the COVID inquiry, Grenfell, what's likely to happen with small boat crossings and all the rest of it. So, I can see that. But then the flip side of that is you've got a bunch of people who, don't appear to be trying to run the country in the best interest of the nation. And so, why would we expect them to make that decision there? So I guess that perspective indicates that it won't be coming until the autumn. But who knows? I mean, the sooner the better, as far as I'm concerned.
Oh, I think so. I think we need it right now. And I think also everyone's on high alert, politically high alert as a country. You're just like, come on, we need to change now. This is getting ridiculous. I know Tories who up in Cambridgeshire are saying they just can't vote Conservative next time. They're not telling me which way they're going to vote, but they say they cannot support the Conservative Party after what they've been through. I think the Partygate and Truss and the kamikaze budget, that was probably the tipping point for a lot of people to say that's enough now. And also the Pincher scandal. There's been so many scandals, haven't there? It's been appalling sort of the last few years. Anyway, I'm going to talk now to the listener. So listeners and people watching on YouTube, if you think that Matt Turmaine is your kind of guy, which obviously is amazing, isn't he? And you want to help him in whatever way you can, Matt, can you tell that person and those people, how can they get involved in your campaign? How can they help you?
Yeah, well, thank you for that, Dan. That is that's very kind. I mean, yes, and anybody who is listening, you are very welcome. I can assure you of a warm welcome in Watford if you're able to come and help us out. And there are, of course, a myriad ways of doing it. If you fancy it, you could come door knocking with us. We're out there talking to voters all the time because it's very important to listen in politics as well as talking, and that's a great way for us to be able to do that. There are, of course, enormous amounts of material that we want to deliver to people. So if you don't fancy knocking on doors, you can come and do some delivery instead. There's phone canvassing activity that's taking place too. And there are a whole load of other skills that people have got that we would really welcome. So, if your particular skill set is in data, then come and have a talk to us about how we're interpreting data and what we can do with that. If you are brilliant at digital media, come and talk to us about what we can do. Digital is going to play such an important part of this election. I mean, it was a very important part of the last couple of elections, really. But it's ever more so, and how we work on making sure we're engaging with people well through that. And then lastly, I guess we do put our events up on the Labour events page. So it's very easy to do that. And failing anything else, good old Google, just Google Watford Labour Party or Matt Turmaine, and you will find us and you can get in touch that way.
Fantastic. Thank you, Matt. I'll tell you what, we'll leave in the show notes for this show, there'll be a website link. We'll put that in there for you guys. You can go to that straight away. If you've got an email address, let me have that as well. And all I'd say was to any activist who is, you don't have to even be a member to help in a campaign, of course, anyone who's favourable to Labour winning wants to do their bit, or to members, you might have a skill that you don't even realise is useful for campaigning. So I'm a natural extrovert. I suspect you are too, Matt. And so canvassing for me is quite a pleasurable thing. I love going out knocking on doors. I love listening to people. I love talking to people. So I just think, yeah, canvassing, that's my thing every time. But there are lots of people who have got, like you said about data, is a really good point. That's the sort of job you might not even know if you're not that active like you were in 2003. You might not appreciate that you have a skill that is incredibly useful that other people just can't do. I can't do data. That's not my thing. So, so if you've got those skills, whatever they might be, just get in touch. And even if, as Besma found out in Hammersmith, where she first met you, she was doing the welcoming job. So her job was welcoming people who turn up at the campaign centre and just pointing them in the direction of, this is what so-and-so is doing that job, or do you want a drink or whatever. Even things like hospitality in the campaign centre has a massive impact.
100%. So, I mean, if you're great at organising a night out for your mates, then you can come and organise people and coordinate what it is that they're doing to try and make it effective, to try and make it enjoyable. So, yes, you're absolutely correct. Those skills are really important as well.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, all the very best of luck, mate. I hope that you are an MP very soon. If not soon, then maybe later this year, and that Watford maintains its standing as that bellwether seat that shows us that there's an incoming Labour government. Good luck with it all.
Well, thanks very much, Dan, and best of luck with this as well. It's brilliant, and you've been really kind to have me on. It's been a tremendous experience, and so thank you.
Good man. Good luck. Take care, everyone. Before I go, may I ask a massive favour? Like this podcast and smash that subscribe button. Leave a review. Share this podcast with other Labour Party members, your CLPA executive, and anyone who, like us, wants to fight for the next Labour government our country so desperately needs. If you're a candidate and wish to come onto the show, then email me at labourpodcast@gmail.com. Until next time, bye for now.